A man walks into the wilderness with $11. He stays 8 months. He comes out warm, fed, and richer than when he left. That is not a folktale, friend. That is the documented life of a frontier trapper who knew 25 things your grandfather knew and your father almost knew, and you were never taught at all. The gear industry built a $40 billion empire the day your family forgot those 25 things. Every single one of them still works exactly the way it did in 1837. My name is Levi Blackwood. I am 53 years old and 7th generation on Blackwood Ridge in the southern Appalachians. My people came up out of the Carolinas in the 1790s and never once saw a reason to leave. I do not blame them. My grandfather Eli kept a leather journal from 1936 until the week he died, and he made me sit across from him at the kitchen table and copy every last entry by hand before he would let me go home for Christmas. I was 14 years old. I did not think much of it then. I think about it every single day now. Near everything I'm about to walk you through, Eli lifted from men who learned it firsthand: trappers, homesteaders, ridge farmers, timber crews, women who kept families alive through winters that would close a modern grocery store for a week and leave half the neighborhood helpless. None of these 25 tricks faded because they stopped working. They faded because somebody figured out how to charge you money for the plastic version. That is not a conspiracy, neighbor. That is just how markets eat old knowledge. The tricks are still there. They are sitting right where the old men left them. Let us go get them. 25 down to 1. The countdown number. 25. Fat wood fire starter. Dead pine stumps hold a secret inside. The heartwood of a long dead pine soaks up resin over decades until the wood itself becomes the fuel, orange-colored, oily to the touch, almost waxy when you drag a thumbnail across the grain. Frontier men called it fat wood, or lighter wood, or rich pine depending on what ridge they grew up on. They carried a pocket full of shavings the way you carry a lighter today, except the pocketful never ran out of fluid and never failed in the rain. Shave a curl of fat wood the size of a walnut. Strike a spark from steel into the pile. It catches even in wet snow. A box of chemical fire starter cubes at any gear store today runs $8 for 12 cubes, and I will tell you from personal experience that half of them will not light when you actually need them to. Fat wood grows free in every pine state in the lower 48. Nobody banned it. Nobody had to. They just made sure you never learned to recognize a resin-soaked stump when you walked past one. Start looking. You will find one this week. Number 24. The green stick pot hook. 1 knife, 1 stick, 1 meal over open fire. Picture a mountain man in a cream-colored shirt crouched by a log and rock fire ring. A single green stick notched at one end and wedged between a stone and packed dirt. A cast-iron Dutch oven hanging from the notch 3 inches above the coals. Stew is simmering. That is the entire rig. The green stick cost him the 30 seconds it took to cut it. Eli called it the shepherd's crook in his journal, and he wrote that his own grandmother used one her whole life and never once owned a camp stove. Coleman started selling pressurized camp stoves in 1923. A decent one today runs $69 at any outdoor retailer, and the fuel canister is empty by Sunday. Nobody outlawed the green stick. They just made you feel primitive for using one. Cook 1 meal over an open fire this weekend with your stove turned off. Cut the stick first. Feel how fast that changes things. Number 23. The bow bed. Your sleeping pad costs more than groceries. In the 1830s, expedition Dr. Edwin James watched Rocky Mountain trappers cut fresh spruce and pine boughs, arm-length pieces, and lay them thick in a rectangle with butt ends outward and the soft tips inward, building a mattress 6 inches deep off the frozen ground. 1 wool blanket over the top. Dead air trapped in the boughs. The man slept warm. A Thermarest inflatable sleeping pad at any gear shop today runs $180 and springs a leak by year 3. The American Alpine Club's own wilderness medicine literature confirms that a proper bough bed insulates as well as a closed-cell foam pad. Leave no trace guidelines made cutting live branches a problem in managed forest, and that is a fair concern for the land. But the knowledge itself never got worse. The tree just got rules around it. Number 22. The reflector log wall heat is not the problem. Direction is. A 1917 United States Army Field Manual calculated that a properly built log reflector wall kept a bivouac of 4 men above freezing at 20 degrees below on 1 cubic foot of wood per man per hour. 1 cubic foot. The wall is nothing complicated. Split logs stood on edge behind an open fire, 2 feet high, mud chinked at the base, throwing every unit of heat the fire makes back at your body instead of letting it drift sideways into the dark. The Forest Service started writing open fire restrictions in the 1930s. Leave no trace, codified in 1994, discouraged the practice further. Neither one was wrong about wildfire risk. Both together taught a whole generation to buy a propane heater instead of understand a fire. The Army's own Field Manual 2176 still teaches the reflector wall. The Army knows. You were just not told. Number 21. Char cloth. A rag in a tin beats a plastic lighter. Cut a strip of worn linen or cotton, put it in a small tin with a single pinhole punched in the lid, set the tin at the edge of your coals. Smoke seeps out the hole until it stops. Open the tin when it cools. Inside is a black papery cloth that catches a single spark from a struck piece of steel and holds it as a glowing coal for a full 60 seconds, long enough to nurse into flame with dry moss or shredded bark. BIC ships 1 billion disposable lighters a year. The lighter costs $1, works twice in actual rain, and ends up in a landfill by spring. Char cloth costs nothing, works in the rain, and the tin refills every time you have a fire. Colonial Williamsburg still teaches this to 5-year-olds at their history camps. 5-year-olds can do this. I am not going to say what that implies about the rest of us. I am just going to let it sit there. Number 20. Sand heat battery. Somebody built a business the day you forgot every trick on this list. Not always with malice, but the dollar followed the forgetting every single time. Fill an empty tin can with dry creek sand. Set it in the coals until it is too hot to touch. Wrap it in a flannel shirt and shove it inside your blanket roll. 6 hours of heat. A Depression-era drifter in 1932 Kentucky slept warm on frozen ground with less than $12 to his name, doing exactly this. Cornell's College of Engineering confirmed sand-based thermal storage is viable in 2021. A disposable hand warmer costs $1.50 and is garbage by morning. A tin and creek sand costs nothing and works every winter of your life. I have one on my workbench right now. The dog sleeps next to it every chance he gets. Number 19. Pemmican. One food replaced an entire aisle. A Cree woman on the northern plains in the 1820s pounds dried buffalo meat in a hide bag with a smooth stone, mixes in rendered tallow and dried service berries, and presses the paste into a rawhide sack the size of a loaf of bread. 4,000 calories per pound. Shelf stable for 10 years in a cool cache. The Hudson's Bay Company issued 1.5 pounds per man per day on expedition, and their men did not starve. A modern energy bar gives you 200 calories for $2.50. That is 120 times the cost per calorie of pemmican. Procter & Gamble put Crisco on shelves in 1911 and spent the next 60 years telling Americans that animal fat would kill them. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition ran a meta-analysis in 2010 covering 347,000 people and found no significant evidence that saturated fat causes heart disease. The Cree woman was right. The cereal box was selling. Make a batch this fall with dried meat, rendered tallow, and dried berries. It does not need a label. Number 18. The tallow fat lamp. Free light from Sunday supper leftovers. A Kentucky cabin in 1845. A shallow iron dish filled with hardened tallow on the mantel. A twist of cotton rag laid in it as a wick. A man in a long shirt lighting it from a fireplace ember. Room glows yellow. Burns 4 hours on the fat left over from cooking. Standard Oil started refining kerosene in the 1860s, and by 1880 had made the tallow lamp look like something only a poor man used because he could not afford real light. FEMA's own emergency preparedness guides still list improvised fat lamps as viable when the grid goes down. A can of Crisco and a length of cotton twine will light your kitchen for a week. Your great-grandmother knew that. The power company spent 100 years hoping she would forget. Number 17. The wet bag. Evaporative cooler. A Wyoming cattle drive in 1885. A cowboy soaks a rawhide bag in a creek, drops in a wrapped piece of beef and a jar of milk, and hangs the bag from a green cottonwood branch in the shade of the wagon. Wind moves through the wet leather. Water evaporates. The inside of that bag stays 15 degrees below the 90-degree afternoon air. Milk keeps until supper. Beef keeps overnight. Australians called their version the Coolgardie Safe, patented in the 1890s, same physics, 0 moving parts, 0 cost. A Yeti hard cooler today runs $350 empty. A piece of wet canvas from a hardware store runs $4. A University of Arizona agricultural extension study in 2019 confirmed the same evaporative principle drops interior temperatures by up to 20 degrees. The physics did not retire. The catalog just got shinier. Number 16. The Swedish torch. Ton. Log outperforms a camping stove. Stand an 18-inch section of dry hardwood on its end in the snow. Split it into 6 wedges with an axe, but leave the bottom 2 inches intact so the log holds together. Drop a handful of dry bark shavings into the center, split, and light it. The log burns from the inside out for 4 hours and throws a flat, stable surface on top wide enough for a coffee pot, a cast iron pan, or a Dutch oven. Mountain Safety Research ships a titanium backpacking stove for $189 that eats a $6 fuel canister every weekend. The Swedish military and bushcraft instructors around the world still teach the torch because it never stopped working. It just never had a shelf at any gear retailer because you cannot sell a log for $189. Well, some people have tried. Number 15. The crooked knife. A French-Canadian voyageur in the 1830s pulled a single curved blade toward his chest, shaving cedar into a canoe rib. That same knife carved his spoon that morning, mended his snowshoe frame that afternoon, and split a hardwood pot hook before supper. One tool, handmade from an old file, lasted his whole life and his son's life after him. Nobody outlawed the crooked knife ever. They just filled every hardware store in America with 50 specialty tools that each did one thing, and none of them well in a wet camp. North House Folk School in Minnesota still teaches the crooked knife. Their graduates carve canoe ribs and spoons and camp furniture with one blade. The tool never got worse. The catalog just got bigger. Number 14. The Snow Cave Candle Furnace. From here down, the tricks get simpler and the gear they replace gets more expensive. That is not an accident. Simple got crowded off the shelf by expensive. Keep that in your pocket. An Arctic expedition photograph from 1911. A man in a fur-lined hood carves a domed shelter into a snowdrift, smooths the walls with his palm, punches a single vent hole through the ceiling, and lights one tallow candle on a shelf of packed snow. Outside, 40 below. Inside, 32 above. 20 minutes on one candle. The American Alpine Club still teaches this. Every Norwegian military conscript learns it in basic training. American car campers do not, because a 4-season tent costs $800 and the retailer needs you to buy it. Dig the vent hole first. Carbon monoxide does not negotiate. Number 13. The spring house. Before your great-grandfather owned a refrigerator, he built a small stone shed over the coldest spring on his land. Water flowed through a stone trough, and crocks of milk, butter, and cream sat right in the current. 42 degrees straight through July. No electricity, no compressor, no monthly bill. No law ever banned the spring house. State health departments in the 1920s began requiring pasteurization for anything sold commercially, which was reasonable. And then General Electric ran advertisements calling the icebox the housewife's shame, which was not reasonable. A University of Vermont study in 2013 on off-grid cold storage confirmed that spring water in a shaded stone structure holds refrigeration temperatures year-round. Water, stone, gravity. The utility company never sent a bill for any of those three things, which is exactly why they never mentioned the spring house in the brochure. Number 12. The root cellar. Dig a hole in the north side of a hill. Shore it with timber. Lay a plank floor. Store 2,000 pounds of potatoes, carrots, cabbages, and apples through 5 months of winter. The United States Department of Agriculture's Farmer's Bulletin 879 from 1917 said a well-built cellar holds 32 to 40 degrees on its own. Then in 1936, Congress passed the Rural Electrification Act, and General Electric and Frigidaire came selling refrigerators door to door. Extension bulletins stopped teaching root cellaring, and by 1965 the knowledge was sitting in a museum display case. University of Minnesota Extension published a paper in 2013 confirming root cellaring still works and uses zero electricity. Nobody banned the hole in the hill. They just sold you a plug-in box for $1,400. I have a root cellar on this ridge. Cost me 2 weekends and a borrowed auger. My grandfather's carrots are in it right now. Number 11. Water glass eggs. 8 dozen eggs, 6 months, no refrigeration. An Oregon homestead in 1918. A stoneware crock filled with sodium silicate solution, water glass, sold at any general store for pennies, and a woman submerging fresh, unwashed eggs into it. The silicate sealed the shell pores. Eggs stayed usable for 8 months without a single watt of electricity. The USDA quietly dropped water glassing from its home preservation guidance mid-century and replaced it with refrigerate promptly. Refrigerator sales tripled between 1935 and 1955. Utah State University Extension acknowledged in writing in 2014 that water-glassed eggs remain viable for months when properly done. Not enthusiastically endorsed, just quietly acknowledged. Same eggs, different profit margin. Number 10. Open-pollinated seed-saving Ohio, 1936. A farmer lets his best tomato go soft on the vine, scoops the seeds, dries them on newsprint, and stores them in a labeled envelope in a mason jar. Same seed, same tomato every year for 40 years. A burpee seed packet in 1936 cost a nickel. A saved seed cost nothing. Then Congress passed the Plant Patent Act in 1930, the Plant Variety Protection Act in 1970, and Bowman versus Monsanto in 2013 confirmed that patent holders could restrict what a farmer does with next year's seed. Pioneer and Monsanto sold hybrids that do not breed true. Buy new every spring. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in 2006 called farmer-saved seed fundamental to agricultural biodiversity. The seed is older than the patent. It always has been. Save 1 tomato seed this fall. 1 envelope. 1 jar. That is the whole act of resistance. Number 9. Wood ash lye soap. Save hardwood ashes in a barrel. Pour rainwater through them. Catch brown lye water at the bottom. Mix that with rendered fat. Cook it until it saponifies. Pour into a wooden mold. Cut into bars with a wire when it sets. 20 pounds of soap in an afternoon, and it cost your great-grandmother the ash she was sweeping out anyway, and the fat she would have thrown to the hogs, effectively nothing. That same bar, now hand-labeled grass-fed tallow artisan soap, sells for $6 to $9 at any farmer's market today. Colgate-Palmolive spent the 1950s convincing Americans that homemade soap was not clean enough. It is the same molecule. 200 years, one recipe, never a bill. The bar did not change. The marketing budget did. And if you have bought $9 artisan soap at a farmer's market, I have, no judgment. They are very good at selling. Number 8. Brain-tanned hide. From here down, the list stops being about convenience. These were complete systems of knowledge passed hand to hand, father to son, mother to daughter, for generations. They faded not because something better came along, but because the chain of passing broke. Every animal carries enough brain to tan its own hide. That is an old saying, and it is chemically accurate. Flesh the hide clean, work the brain into the skin, smoke it over a punky fire. Leather that lasts 20 years and flexes in the cold instead of cracking. Chrome tanning replaced it in factories after 1900. The EPA now fines those same tanneries for chromium runoff. My first brain-tanned hide at 14 looked like something the dog had been at for a week. Eli never said a word, just watched. That kind of teaching does not have a retail price. Number 7. The Smokehouse. An Appalachian homestead in 1910. A shallow pit dug in clay soil, lined with river stones. A slow hickory fire kept smoldering at the bottom. Hickory poles laid across the top. Slabs of pork side hung from iron hooks. 3 days of cool gray smoke, and that pork kept 9 months without a single ampere of electricity. The USDA Farmer's Bulletin, 9/18, published in 1917, gave every American farmer the exact recipe. Then the Federal Meat Inspection Act of 1906 arrived, and the large meat-packing corporations, Armour and Swift, who lobbied hard for it, watched their real competition, every backyard smokehouse in America, get regulated into practical extinction. By 1978, 41 states had zoning codes prohibiting outdoor smoke-curing structures inside municipal limits. Not because the meat was dangerous, because Armour needed the shelf space. Modern grocery store bacon runs $9 a pound and is injected with liquid smoke and phosphates. Eli's smokehouse recipe is still in the journal. I am not saying anything. I am just saying the bulletin is still online and the USDA has not taken it down. Number 6. Graywater garden irrigation. In the 1930s, my grandmother ran a pipe from the washtub straight out the kitchen wall into the tomato patch. Kept the garden green through the worst dry summers on nothing but yesterday's wash water. State plumbing codes in the 1970s and 1980s classified every drop of household water as sewage and required it discharged to septic or municipal system, not federal law, just state and local codes. And the utilities getting paid by the gallon did not fight those codes very hard. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health wrote in their own 2011 guidance that a properly designed graywater system can safely irrigate a landscape and cut potable water use by 30%. The garden always knew what to do with it. The city just wanted its cut. A pipe and a patch. Free water for tomatoes. Somebody charge you for the right to say no to that. Number 5. Backyard laying hens, Nebraska, 1934. Every farmhouse in half the town lots kept 6 to 12 hens. 300 eggs per bird per year. Feed cost about a penny an egg. Post-war zoning ordinances in most American suburbs classified poultry as livestock and banned them from residential lots by 1960. Tyson Foods, incorporated in 1935 as Tyson Feed and Hatchery, grew into an industrial poultry empire. 6 hens in your yard were direct competition. It is worth saying plainly. The last 5 years, Over 100 American cities have legalized backyard hens by ordinance. The American Veterinary Medical Association in 2019 supports small flock keeping under proper husbandry. The hen never went anywhere. The rule book did. And if your city has legalized it and you have not looked into it yet, a half dozen hens in a backyard coop will change your relationship with breakfast in a way that is genuinely hard to describe to someone who has not experienced it. Number 4. Rainwater roof. Harvesting, Oklahoma, 1936. A farm wife caught runoff from a tin roof through wooden gutters into a buried concrete cistern. The USDA Farmers Bulletin, 1418 from 1930, ran the numbers. 1,000 square feet of roof in 30-inch rain country delivers 18,700 gallons a year, free, falling from the sky, landing on a surface you already own. Colorado's prior appropriation water law made rainwater collection technically illegal until Senate Bill O-9080 partially repealed it in 2009. Utah followed in 2010. The reason was not public health. Irrigation districts and municipal water utilities held the legal rights to that water before it ever touched your roof. The EPA's 2013 Green Infrastructure Guidance calls rainwater harvesting a simple and effective practice. Your roof, their water. That is how it stood for decades. Check your state law before you set out a barrel. Most states have moved, some have not. Number 3, the chimney. As a thermal engine. In 1974, energy codes declared the open masonry fireplace a net heat loser. Counties rewrote the rules. The 12-inch stone wall got replaced with 2x4s and pink insulation. The programmable thermostat showed up, and the daily skill of running a chimney as a working machine quietly disappeared. Here is what the studies missed. The old-timers ran the whole system. 12 inches of stone minimum. Damper full open at strike, 2/3 at settle, half at hold. 1 hour before bed, rake the coals 3 inches deep across the firebox floor, set the damper at half, and walk away. The stone radiates warmth until dawn. No flame, no electricity, no monthly bill. The Department of Energy uses that exact thermal mass language today. The code book did not measure your grandmother. It measured a bad copy of her. Number 2, the birch bark canoe. Birch bark peeled clean in early summer. Cedar ribs bent by hand. Seams sealed with pine pitch. 50 pounds finished, carried 1,000 in cargo, and repaired anywhere in the woods with 3 materials found within 50 feet of the water. Henry Rowe Schoolcraft watched Ojibwe builders do exactly that on Lake Superior in 1830 and wrote every detail down. Grumman started stamping aluminum canoes in 1944. By 1970, the birch bark canoe was behind museum glass. A modern Kevlar canoe runs $3,200 and goes back to the factory for repairs. Fewer than 40 master builders are alive in North America today. When they go, 3,000 years of watercraft knowledge goes with them. That is not sentiment. That is a deadline. Number 1, sovereignty. Number 1 is not a trick. It never was going to be. Every single thing on this list, the fatwood, the char cloth, the snow cave, the bark canoe, the seed jar, every last one of them was pointing at the same thing the whole time. The skill of not needing a store, not needing a catalog, not needing a monthly payment to a company that does not know your name. That trapper from the opening walked in with $11 and walked out sovereign. Eli wrote that word on the last page of his journal. Underlined it twice. Never explained it. He did not think it needed explaining. None of these 25 tricks stopped working. Not one. They just got crowded off the shelf by something with a price tag on it. You do not have to master all 25 this winter. I am not asking you to build a smokehouse this weekend or peel birch bark off a standing tree. I am asking you to pick one. Just one this week. Save the fat from your next batch of bacon and try a tallow lamp on your back porch tonight. Or cut a green stick this Saturday and cook one meal over a fire in your yard with the camp stove turned off. Or make one square of char cloth in a soup can in your coals and light a fire from it. Or find a resin-soaked pine stump on your next walk in the woods and put a piece of fat wood in your coat pocket. One thing this week. That is how the library reopens. I ran the snow cave candle drill with my nephew 2 winters ago in a drift behind the woodshed. 22 degrees outside, 34 inside, within 30 minutes, on one tea light. The boy has not asked about a heated tent since. That is not because the tent is bad. It is because the boy now knows something. Knowing changes a person in ways that buying never quite does. Tell me down below which of the 25 your grandfather or grandmother actually did. Not read about. Actually did with their hands. The one that shows up most in the comments is the one I build the next full video around. The old men knew things a whole industry now bets you will never relearn. You just learn 25 of them. Do not let them close the library on your watch. Keep the old ways. They kept us.